there, I'm Sharon Colvin. I'm the Youth Services Consultant for the Vermont Department of Libraries. Today we're going to be talking about what I'm reading. I started this series last month in February, and I had a huge list of books for you. Well, I hate to say it, but I have an even bigger list for you this month because I was reading for the DCF committee. I'm going to try this a little bit differently. One of the frustrating things is that after I read books, I often give them away to you, so it's a good purpose, but then I don't have them to show you. So instead of doing something with the webcam, I'm going to do this with Library Thing. If you want help using Library Thing, there is a separate video explaining exactly how to use it. You don't have to, though. If you want to follow along, you can go to librarything.com/sparklecookie /catalog/sparklecookie. That will have the most updated information. All right, so here is my catalog, and like I said, if you want to learn how to use this, there's a separate video, but for right now, I'm just going to be highlighting some of the books that I really liked from the last month. All right, so, and especially some of the ones that might have slipped through the cracks. The Turtle of Oman right here, this book was a DCF selection for 2005. I absolutely love the cover. I have a thing for turtles. He's so cute. This book is fantastic. It's short. It's definitely an elementary level book. Probably that like 4th grade is perfect. But it can be enjoyed by families. It can be enjoyed by older kids. It's about a kid, RF, who has to leave his home, and his home is in Oman, and he's going to move to Michigan, and he just does not like this idea at all. He's very close to his family, especially his grandfather, who he's very sad to leave behind. And this is the story of him getting ready to leave his home. Nothing much happens in this book. It's a very quiet book, but it's very well written. It's extremely descriptive. It's beautiful. It gives kind of a happy opening into what's happening in the Middle East, the happy culture that we don't hear about very much. His grandfather is fabulous. He's a wonderful, wonderful caregiver. His mom is just desperately trying to pack up the house and keeps trying to gently nudge RF, have you packed yet? Have you packed yet? And of course, he hasn't. He really just doesn't want to say goodbye. And of course, like the turtles, he's going to leave, but he'll be back. But of course, he's going for 3 years. It's a long time when you're a little kid. This book is phenomenal. I highly recommend you read it. It's on Listen Up Vermont. I recommend that as well. It's a really quiet, wonderful book for your young kids who are looking for something a little more meaty, something they can discuss, but not necessarily all of the action. And it is a lower reading level, but it's full of wonderful cultural references. So I highly recommend that one. All right, moving on my list, we're going to get to some things that weren't on the list. I'm picking and choosing here because there's too many to go through. Popular is one book that just missed the list. I loved this book. I thought this was phenomenal. It's a memoir. It's written by she was 15 when she wrote it, and there's 2 things I really love about this book. One is this is about a very vulnerable middle school student. She doesn't fit in very well. She's having trouble, with friends and being popular. She's struggling with all of this. One day her dad digs up this book that he found in a flea market, and it's a guide to being popular from the 1950s. And so Maya decides, as she's a writer too, obviously, and she decides it would be kind of a fun exercise to try to follow the advice of this book. And so she does. And you can imagine the hilarity that ensues. She wears pearls and girls and red lipstick to middle school. And the other thing I really love about this book is it takes place in Texas, right by the Mexican border, which is a part of the country not a lot of kids are familiar with. I grew up by the Mexican border, so it's a little more familiar to me. And so I think it's a part of the world that this is a nice window into that. She lives in a part of the country where, Border Patrol with machine guns and drug-stuffing bombs are a regular occurrence. Before they get into the school bus, they have to be checked and sniffed, and bomb scares, and oh my goodness, so much goes on. So it's a very rich story. She's a very ballsy girl, let me tell you. At one point, she has a goal to sit at every table in the lunchroom, and she outlines, the cliques in this high school. She's not a whiny kid at all. I love that about her. She's not whiny. She doesn't lament the fact that she's not popular. She's just an outcast, and she has a best friend who's an outcast as well. But she just wants to go sit with these people and see what it's like, and she thinks they hate her, but really, they don't. They think she's kind of cool. Um, Anyway, this story is wonderful. I think your high school kids, your middle school kids too, are really going to like this. I think it could be a really good discussion book. One of the problems that the TCF committee we had with it was that it is very image-centric. It's a lot about what you look like, what your body looks like, what kind of image you portray. So I think this could be a really good discussion book for your book clubs, especially if you have books full of girls. Unfortunately, this book probably won't appeal to boys, but what are you going to do? All right, let's see what else I have for you. The Night Gardener is on the DCF list, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway because it's awesome. If you know me at all, you know that fantasy is not my thing. I have a hard time reading it, but this one, awesome. Oh my gosh, this book is so scary. This is one of those books that you should give to your kids who like their pants scared off of them. It definitely could be read by your younger kids, like 5th, 6th grade, but probably, talk to the kids first and see how many nightmares they usually get. This is about this creepy dude. You see this creepy dude right here at the cover? Oh my gosh, he's so scary. So it's about these two kids who are orphans. And they come to this house looking for work because they have no food, no money. And it's this freaky house with this tree that's kind of attached to it. And what you find out is that this tree is kind of like an evil giving tree. It will grant you wishes, but you have to give it your soul. And so it gives things like money, snacks. It gives letters from their long-lost parents who are actually dead, like anything you want. And people become addicted to this tree. I'm not going to tell you the rest of it, but there's some horrible things that happen. There's some death, violence, and it's freaky, let me tell you. But it is a really, really well-crafted story. Kids or people who like those kind of gruesome fairy tales might like this one. And it's a really good story. And I think your boys especially are going to really like this one. All right, what else do I have here that you might be interested in? Okay, how about Jacobi? This is another book that just missed the DCF list. This book is for all of your kids who are fans of Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Who. This is kind of a young Sherlock Holmes. Jacobi is very quirky. I'm not a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, I have to say. I don't dislike him. I just haven't read anything. But this character is very likable, kind of quirky and doesn't have great communication skills. And he employs a young assistant who is homeless and looking for work, and they are looking into some paranormal occurrences and trying to figure out what happens. He, of course, sees these crazy little details, and because it's paranormal, there's all sorts of crazy things going on. She falls in love with a werewolf, but I promise it's not like Twilight. It's a little scary. It's a nice mystery. It has a nice piece to it. It takes place in England. The audiobook is phenomenal if you can get your hands on it. And it's a really good piece of writing. And I think those kids that you have who are in middle school, high school, who are looking for a good mystery or who like Sherlock Holmes or Doctor Who and need a book to read, definitely give them this one. I hear that the sequel is on its way. I bet you anything it's listed here somewhere. Maybe not. Anyway, I hear it's on its way, so it's definitely leaves room for more stories. So it could be a new series for all of us. Okay, this book is on the GMBA list. I didn't read everything on the GMBA list. I couldn't do both DCF and GMBA, but I did read some of the books, and this one was really wonderful, and not just because the author's first name is Sharon. This is called A Mad Wicked Folly. This book reminds me of some of the books I read as a kid, where there's kind of a, she has to choose between two boys, and it has that kind of trope, which is a little annoying, but we're going to suspend our discomfort for right now. This takes place in 1900s in London, during the suffrage movement. It's about a wealthy girl who has some hard choices to make. She wants to be an artist. She wants to go to art school. Her family wants her to get married and close her mouth. She obviously doesn't want to settle for that. So she thinks she finds this husband, who will allow her to do whatever she wants. He doesn't seem to really care. He kind of likes the fact that she has a brain and that she has opinions, and he agrees to send her to school, and so she agrees to marry him. And then she meets a police officer who's conveniently there during one of the suffrage big rallies, and he's like the perfect man, but he's poor and, from the wrong side of the tracks. And anyway, you can see where this is going. It's a great story. I think that the suffrage movement isn't something that's written about in YA literature these days, so this could be new and fresh to your teens. It's definitely not new and fresh to us as adults, but it's a decent story, and it's got that nice romantic hook that'll get the girls really interested in it, and maybe they'll do some research afterwards. You never know. All right, what else do I have here that you'd be interested in? Oh, here's a book here. A lot of these books just missed the lists for whatever reason. It's hard. These lists, let me tell you, blood, sweat, and tears and all these committee meetings. So this book here, Chasing the Milky Way, was under consideration. It didn't quite make it, but it's still a wonderful book, and I'd like you to consider it. It's part of this kind of slew of books that's come out recently about mothers with mental illness. I think that these books are really important, especially bipolar disorder is something that's suddenly being talked about. It wasn't always something that was being talked about so openly. But kids who are struggling with this might be looking for these books so that they can open up a conversation about what it's like at home with an unpredictable caregiver. This story is about a girl named Lucy who lives in a trailer park, and she wants to be a scientist. And she wants to enter this robot competition with her best friend who also lives in the trailer park. She's been saving up money in a coffee can forever so she can pay her admission into this. The problem is that her mom is off her meds and is not being, well, she's not being a mom. And so she really wants to go to this competition, and her mom kind of loses it, and a lot of bad things happen. They end up, the kids, 12-year-olds, end up driving this huge RV down the street and trying to get to the competition. They don't really you don't really get there, and of course the police are out, and it's terrible. It's a little neat at the end, which is one of our hesitations at the DCF committee, because she goes to the hospital for a short period of time, and then her parental status is reinstated, which made us a little uncomfortable. I'm not sure. I think it's clean because it is a young book. It's not meant to be really a harsh tale. It is just kind of an elementary level story about a girl with a dream and who has a crazy mom who's kind of getting in the way, who means really well. That's one of the things I like about these stories is the mom, she means well. She really is trying. She's just, her best really isn't good enough. So I think these are books for you to keep in mind, especially for those quiet kids who might be suffering at home that you don't know. These could find a place for some of those kids, so it's worth looking into. All right, what else do I have here for you? How about how about this one? I'm laughing because Nuts 2 drove me crazy. It's got talking squirrels. I can't stand talking animals. It drives me batty. All right, this is a high school level book. It's called The Tyrants Daughter. I really loved this book. It's not perfect by any means, but it offers a perspective that's really unique. I read the author's notes at the end, and she talks about how she wrote this book because she was watching the news at one point. I think she had gone to Iraq and had toured some of Saddam Hussein's palaces, and she had seen some playhouses that were gorgeous that had belonged to some of the children of his wives, and she became really curious, like, what happened to those children? What happened to the wives? Are they innocent? Are they guilty? Did they know what was going on? And these are all really interesting questions. So she started writing this book, and it doesn't take place in anywhere in particular. She kind of melded together everything she was hearing in the news so that it's kind of some mysterious Muslim country in the Middle East that's having problems, but nowhere in particular. So this is a story about Layla. Her mother and brother have just moved to D.C. From this mysterious country. Her father was killed in a coup, and you don't really know anything about it, but what you start learning is her classmates know about him because they watch the news and they read social media, and they call him a tyrant, they call him a dictator, and she doesn't know that. So she starts doing research. She goes to the library and she starts reading news reports, and she's really curious about, what do other people think about her father? That's not the father that she knew. And she starts learning about her family and the history and the terrible things that are happening in her country, things that she hadn't realized before. She was unaware because she was just this kid in a palace. And he called himself the king, but now the media is calling himself a tyrant. And the other thing is he's dead. She's lost her father. And so she's dealing with the grief of that, but her classmates really don't know what to do with that. How do you grieve for someone who was, a monster? And she didn't know him as a monster, and it's all very confusing. This is a really interesting look into a perspective that is never talked about. She develops some really nice friendships with kids who try to understand her and try to support her. But her mother is still very much attached to the country and to her brother-in-law, who's taken over the country. The ending is not as satisfactory as I would like to see, but it's worth discussing. This would be a wonderful book discussion book. Some really interesting themes, some good stories here, and I think your high school students, it's worth reading, definitely. All right, anything else I have for you? Let's see, All the Bright Places. This book here I reviewed really briefly when it came to my office, and of course I had to read it. It's gotten a huge amount of hype. There is a book deal in the works. They've been sending all sorts of tchotchkes, and the marketing around it is amazing. So I wanted to read it and see what it was all about. I don't know. It's not going to be a very happy movie. I haven't seen The Fault in Our Stars, but I'm assuming it's going to be kind of like that. I will tell you right now that the main character commits suicide about 2/3 of the way through the book. Yeah, this is definitely a high school book. It's about two kids. They're in high school. They meet on a ledge in their high school. They're both contemplating suicide, and then to cover for each other at the end, he covers for her and says that she saved him. And her name is Violet. His name is Theodore. And so the whole school believes that he was suicidal and that she saved him. But in reality, they saved each other. They develop this friendship and eventually fall in love. There is some sex in this book. And it's told in alternating perspectives. The audiobook is wonderful if you can get your hands on it, but it is a very dark subject, obviously. But I think your high school students are going to find some things in it that they can relate to. It did drive me a little crazy that this boy is obviously mentally ill. He has some very violent mood swings, and nobody really notices, and his parents are kind of lost, and he stops coming to school and nobody's really noticing, and he has a therapist or a counselor who checks in on him, but it's just not really working, and I don't know, that bothers me as a caregiver. I like to see more active adults, but maybe that's just me being optimistic. Anyway, the two of them fall in love, and Finch gets really depressed. He ends up killing himself, and then the last part of the book, I think it gets a little didactic. It's a little bit about, it's survival and suicide survivor guides, and, how is she going to live on, and she tries to deal with this. It's a good approach to a topic that needs to be talked about, definitely. The kids will like it. I think Dan's a little melodramatic, but, again, if I was 16, I'd probably think differently. The movie is not going to be happy at all, so I might skip that one. But the kids are going to love it, so plan on owning this one because the kids are going to hear about it everywhere. All right, what else do I have for you that you might not have heard of? Oh, this one's interesting, Screaming at the Ump. And this one I considered for TCF, and again, it didn't quite make it. This is a fun one. If you have baseball fans in your library, this could be a good middle school read for them. This is about umpires, which, we never talk about the umpires. We yell at them. We don't talk about them. This is about a kid named Casey. He's 12, and his father owns the third best umpire school in the country out of 3 umpire schools, so he's the third best. So people come, and they come to this camp, and it's in New Jersey, and they learn how to be umpires. And they have this day, which is kind of awesome, and it's called, what's it called? Scream at the Ump Day? Oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called. But it's a day where they bring in the entire town to scream at the umpires while they're trying to do their job so that they can see if they can take the pressure. It's hysterical. Anyway, so what happens is that one of the new students at the umpire school used to be a pitcher, and he was suspected of doing drugs and using steroids, and he disappeared, and now he's turning up again as an umpire. And Casey just happens to want to be a reporter. He's in middle school, he's in 6th grade, and he just joined the paper, and he really wants to write an article about this guy who he thinks should have been kicked out of the league because he was doing drugs, and now he wants to be an umpire. What is that about? And so obviously he's 12, everything's very black and white. He writes this article that is all one-sided, and his teacher gives him back to him and says, maybe you should interview the guy. So he does, and he gets the other side of the story, and it turns out that a lot of people are doing drugs, including some of his favorite players, and that not everything is as simple as it seems. At the same time, he's also dealing with his parents' divorce. He lives with his dad, but his mom has remarried someone he doesn't like, and he really doesn't want to talk to her, and he's being pushed by his father to engage with her and let her into his life, and he really doesn't want to do it. So this is a story about a kid who's dealing with a lot of gray. There's a lot of gray area in this book, and I think it's a really interesting conversation book. The end wraps up a little neatly, but it's a young book, and it's worth reading. And if you have baseball fans, they're gonna love it. Umpires are something we don't talk about. All right, how about Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere? This is a story about Hurricane Katrina. Very uplifting, I know. This is probably upper elementary, middle school, like 5th, 6th grade book. It's about a girl named Armani, and she is turning 10 right before Hurricane Katrina hits, and she hears things about this storm coming, but she doesn't want her birthday party canceled, which is totally understandable, and that's all she can think about. And then pretty soon the storm hits, and there's some harsh stuff in here. This book is the most descriptive book about Katrina that I've read. The way they describe the black, oily, frothy water and the smells and the bodies in the water, yikes. It's pretty disgusting. However, it is written at a young level. There's no blood, there's no, limbs or anything like that. And you never see her dad die. He does die, but you never see him die. And the grandmother kind of dies in her sleep. So it is a low level. One of the things that's hard, though, is that because we as adults have seen so much coverage and so much media about Katrina, there are a lot of things that we bring to the story. So it's upsetting because we know what happened and what's happening, whereas the kids may not. And a long time has passed since Katrina, so some of your young kids really won't know about it, and this could be an interesting conversation piece. So some tough stuff happens here. There are a couple of deaths. They're living in a camp. And they have no parents with them. One of her siblings is sick, and she's really afraid of the social workers. She's convinced that the social worker wants to take her away and separate her from her siblings, and they come to find out that the social worker is just trying to help. It takes her a long time to learn to earn Armani's trust. And this poor kid, she's 10 years old, and she's taking care of her whole family. And at one point, I really loved where she just is done. She's like, I'm going to the bathroom by myself. You guys have to take care of yourselves. I'm sick of this. And I thought that was very real. She's not impervious. So this is a really good book and could be a good discussion book as well, from an interesting topic. All right, this is another one that I really loved. This is called The Blossoming Universe of Milandymond. This is a story that you've heard before. It's about a girl who she has an estranged grandmother, and so she goes and spends some time with her and meets her and realizes she's a real person, blah, blah, blah. However, the interesting twist to this story is that Violet is biracial. Her mom is white, her dad is black. Her dad died in an accident, and her mom blames herself, and her mom is also a doctor, so she is not around a lot. And Violet doesn't look like her stepsister, and she's one of the only biracial kids in her class, and she feels really left out, and she's kind of feeling like she's missing some puzzle pieces in her life. And so she reaches out and contacts her paternal grandmother, and it turns out her paternal grandmother really objected to her parents' relationship because she didn't want her son dating a white woman, and so she cut them off. And then when her son died, she got even more upset and never talked to them. She gets over that pretty fast, which, it's a kid's book. Anyway, she bonds with her, and there is a little scary part when her grandmother has a heart attack and Violet has to take her to the hospital. But her mom, is a wonderful, mama lion. She just, lowers into place and is comes to her rescue, which is wonderful. And it's a really good story. It's one of the few stories I've read about biracial kid that I felt it felt real. And so I think this is a good story to talk about. Storyline's not exactly fresh, but I think the topic is. All right. I think that's all I have for you today. Oh, the red pencil. Let's talk about the red pencil. This will be the last one. The red pencil is this mysterious book. I have no idea where to put it, but I will tell you about it anyway because I really liked it. This book is written in poetry. It's in verse, but actually each chapter is its own poem, which I just think takes a tremendous amount of talent. It's about a girl who lives in Sudan, and during some very, very terrible times. There's some serious violence in this book, I will tell you. She's 12. She sees her father murdered. They call them the Janjaweed. They're the militants. They come in, they burn down her village, they kick everyone out. I had a hard time when the sheep died, and she could hear him screaming. That was rough for me. So they moved to a refugee camp, and the thing is about this girl is she's tough. She wants to learn how to write, she wants to learn how to read, but girls are not taught to read and write in this community, and her mom's very against that. Her father and her grandfather really understand her, though, and want her to learn, but her mom just says no. And when she loses her father, she loses one of her advocates. But when she's in the camp, her grandfather takes her aside and starts to teach her. And one of the refugee workers gives her a pencil, and so she starts to learn how to write. And she starts to learn how to express herself. It's a gorgeous book. It is not uplifting. It's a very hard topic. It's very well, it's descriptive, it's very poetic, so you really feel like you're there in the desert with her and her family. But, you know, this is a topic that the younger kids may not be familiar with, and so I'm not sure really where the appeal is. It could definitely be written or read by younger kids. It's not that long, and it's written in poetry, but I think that the content is probably older, maybe middle school. But I'm not sure how many middle school kids are going to pick this up. I don't know. This is one of those books where I feel like it might be written for librarians. So how about that? You guys read it. But I thought it was really good. Anyway, that's my list of what Sharon's reading for March. You can see that I have a couple of books that I'm reading right now. Read between the lines. I'm almost finished with it, and I'm listening to Fish in a Tree. If you want to learn how to spy on my reading habits by using Library Thing, you can look at the other video on how to use Library Thing. And I will do this every month to give you kind of a rundown on the interesting books that I think you might like, to let you know about what I'm reading. Happy reading, everyone. If you want to contact me, you can definitely do that. Here's my contact information. I welcome questions, comments, ideas. If you want to tell me what you're reading, what I should read next, bring it on. I like to hear about it. Happy reading, everybody.